This beginning, which is meant to be an introduction, is actually an introduction written as it comes to my mouth or keyboard. Written with difficulty, as I'm overcome by fury, I return, complete, delete, complete again, and try to compress almost 3 years of my life. I am Cristina. Other details about weight, height, or favorite color and the present story do not matter. I was used to humiliation, beatings, and hunger from a young age. I always knew in my heart that I was a fighter, and I was always proud that I overcame my condition on my own. With the resources I had, I still believe that someone up there loves me. But I fought the real wars much later, torn by physical and mental exhaustion, paralyzed by fear, and with a little baby in my arms. It is my beginning in the life of a warrior, on foreign land, with different weapons, rules, and a different kind of adversary. But above all, a different stake. When I realized what a morass I was in, the universe seemed to have become deaf to my cries. To turn back time, however, I would not do anything differently, or nothing differently until the point where my baby appears. There is no greater gift from God. In a sad period of my life, barely separated from the love of my life, complicated relationship of circumstance, but with extremely much love and respect, I met him. As much as I was aware of what he is, and the fact that he was neither the smartest, nor the most mannered or very schooled, nor did he have other wow qualities, he managed to hook me in his narcissistic hook. He probably found the free space. And me? I was almost 34 years old, yearning for balance, stability, the family I've never had, and children. The differences between us were absolutely visible as a level. Everyone around me discreetly drew my attention to the fact that he was not right for me. Not that I ever considered myself a princess, but I'm a real, kind, educated woman, with common sense, respectful. And in him, the lack of this was very, very visible. Rude in speech, arrogant, without manners, and without a gram of general culture. He judged and laughed at all my friends and anyone who did something with his or her life. They were all fools, and the women were whores, except from his mother and his sister. He did not exclude me. With the risk of offending him, he was a womanizer. Well, he somehow managed to arouse some interest in me, and in a few days, he had already moved into my house, and had opinions about how badly I did everything in life, how much of a can my car is, how dusty my house is, how useless my diplomas are, that I don't have the school of life like him, and other observations. He was a penniless leech, with a parasitic life. He was receiving money from his parents for drugs, cigarettes, gambling, and obviously he had good food and warmth at my home. Thief with a criminal record. An offender, not from criminal underworld. Don't get me wrong. In everything he did, he was an amateur, but at that time, I didn't know these things. I can't say that he did his best to impress me, to make me fall in love with him, but that emotional unavailability, mixed with some unresolved conflicts from my childhood, resulted in a kind of attraction, a kind of something that pushed me towards him. He didn't give me any reason to love him. On the contrary, as the day passed, I discovered how many lies he said. That the man he presented himself to be at the beginning did not exist, and that he was so obsessed with women that he even called one into my house. He couldn't help himself. With all this, every month I got over some escapade, mistake, some swear word, humiliation, or a spit on glasses. He entered in my life with a bag of clothes and debts. He was extremely nosy. He kept picking me apart, as if he was in a hurry to gather stories, weapons, to destroy me later with them. But also literally around the house. He controlled me everywhere. He had no notions of intimacy or personal space. He rummaged through all the nooks, boxes, agendas, old photos. He even reproached me for closing the door when I went to the bathroom. In less than no time, he made contact with my world as if he had been my lover for years, not weeks. He adored the world I was moving in. He felt like he was on stage. He drooled after all my girlfriends. Then, at home, he told me about each one that she flirted with him. I made many mistakes in my life, but this was the biggest. I got into a relationship with this social parasite who was not able to do anything beautiful, legal, or moral in life, and all he owns is his birth certificate. A child of about 30 years old. At first, I didn't really care about this. The principle was, I have everything we need. But when I asked him to peel potatoes, he looked at me as if I asked him to go to the moon and to pick flowers for me. This is women's work, the gray-haired child told me. I asked his mother why her child is like that, and she said, read the Bible. There the Lord explains very clearly the role of women in the family. Yeah, Auntie believed, as other mothers do, that if you put your child to clean or help you in the kitchen, it means that you are not worthy of the title of woman, and you cancel him as a man. They prefer to grow these retards who breed and make shade on the ground for nothing. They live so we can have stupid people to stare at in amazement. And the manly activities were just as beneath the dignity of the gray-haired child. He didn't do those either. He was important, intelligent, superior, unique, from the high intellectual spheres. Why would he waste his precious time serving other inferiors? Let the fools do the work. He was the boss. He assisted. He supervised. He assigned tasks to others. Because he knew. He knew everything, even without ever having done anything concrete in his life. He had servants. And so I saved his mother from the leech and I got him. Then, the gray-haired child began to insult more and more. On a beautiful sunny day, after he made sure I understood from his speech how well all the women in his life looked and how beautiful they were, he said to me, "What do you have? You have nothing. You are no better than me. You live in a house for which you pay installments. It's not even yours. It belongs to the bank. You are no better than me." He repeated this very often. He was right. I was paying the house installment alone and other installments for appliances, furniture, renovations, car, taxes, insurances, and I could afford vacations, saloons, and other expenses. And yes, all his exes were beautiful. I was perhaps skinnier than a woman would want, but with nothing else below them. That is why I was attacked, devalued. But I understood this late. The wounds had been made. The psychological abuse continued. It came to hooligan beatings, which he said were not beatings because they did not end with blood. I knew abuse in all its forms. Sick jealousy, imagined stories about me and any male entity that breathed next to me, from the tractor driver who worked on asphalting the street to the policeman who intervened after I called the emergency number. Friends, colleagues, anyone, absolutely anyone was suspect, and all considered a bunch of fools. And me? Well, in his eyes, I was a whore who did not miss even a chance to cheat. After a beating with shouts, about which he said that it was not a beating and that he was willing to show me what a real beating means, I left this conceited parrot, determined that in my life I will never have to deal with any intellectual modest again. But I wake up one night with some nausea, and I think to do a pregnancy test. Well, it was positive. It did not cross my mind even for a second the idea of interrupting the pregnancy, so I announced him. I did not want to hide it from him. I felt that I was taking a right from the child. I decided to take the risk of resuming contact with his father. With some Oscar-worthy qualities, he mimicked a supreme happiness. He cried and sniveled, just like another time, saying how much he realized that he wants nothing more than to be in our lives, to calm down and fully assume his role in the family. I remember that he said at one point that we lack nothing. We have everything. We have everything. The peasant lacked nothing for me, but he was someone. He said that we have. During my pregnancy, I worked. He didn't. He was fired from his job. He stayed home playing poker, losing money, smoking illegal weed, and going to the casino at night. He asked friends and his father for money. I didn't give him any. I, on the other hand, after work, went shopping, brought groceries home, put them away, cooked, set the table, cleared the table. In fact, I think he was the pregnant one. Absurd jealousies, unjustified requests to constantly prove where I am and with whom, photos, investigations, screams, insults about how much of a whore I am, of course. He didn't do anything around the house. The rats were invading us in the garden because the grass had already grown as tall as the house. I only bothered him with cravings twice, and I calmed down. Once I wanted cheese puffs, and he told me to go get them myself. And another time I wanted fries, and he didn't want to make them for me. I continued to mind my own business. I satisfied my cravings myself. If someone had told me this story, I would have found it hard to believe, honestly. I even asked him once, how is it possible that out of all the flaws and shortcomings that a man can have, how is it possible that he has them all? How? I listed them on my fingers to make it clear to the dumb. I wanted answers. I refused to believe that such people exist and that I found him. Later, I found out that other women found him too and were just as beaten, humiliated, spit on, devalued. Yeah, I think that's his qualification. It was a pregnancy full of bad memories, humiliations, traumas, crying and abuse. I constantly had to prove to him that I did nothing wrong and that I don't do anything wrong, even though he was the one who called women into my house. In an attempt to prove to me that he is a true alpha, he convinced me and his father to change the roof of my house, saying that he would take care of the rest. Of course, he had no money. He borrowed from his father. It was the worst decision. He made fun of every person hired to take care of the roof, my family, and anyone else who participated. He tried to force them all to listen to him, to do what he wanted. He behaved like a master. He gave orders and only made bad decisions. So, some workers took their tools and left. Others came, then they left too. We were caught in 2 torrential storms without a roof on the house. My belongings were under layers of mud. I had a few days until I gave birth. In the last days, I drove the car to save things from the house and move them to his parents' apartment. The house episode was a big drama for me. At the door of the maternity hospital, where couples parted with hugs, I took my suitcase and went up crying in the elevator, cursed and insulted, because the peasant didn't know how to do anything nice. After discharge, I landed in their house. Mine was uninhabitable. There, in their house, cornered, with no place to run, with a baby in my arms, and without my family close by, there the jihad was unleashed. He had the child's baptism money, casino, striptease, women, poker, gambling, women, women again, and again women. He had no shame to talk to me about them, even though they were paid with my child's money. He screamed like a possessed psychopath, sometimes him, sometimes his sister, fights like I've never seen in my life. A family only on paper, some mentally ill people from head to toe. And his mother? A religious fanatic, not a believer, but a narcissistic obsessed with control and power. All gathered there in a filthy apartment, without a gram of hygiene or decent conditions to raise a baby. Anyway, there followed attacks, screams, abuse, broken phones, until one evening when I felt a fear in my bones. I felt that a crazy beating was about to follow. In general, I was not allowed to leave the house with the child, only alone. He considered that his mother was the most capable person to raise the child. Terrified by his threats, I called the emergency number and requested to be evacuated. And so I arrived in a village, far from the city, to live temporarily with a protection order at my brother's house. Even after I left him, struggles of unimaginable psychological burden followed. The parasite who called himself a dad because he bought a pack of wet wipes for the child, and for that he demanded half of the child's allowance, now he gravitated around me, sometimes with forgiveness and promises, sometimes with insults and death threats. I give you my word, I was afraid, and I believe him capable of murder even now. I found out about the Gloria project, where I also called with some fear. I had a number on a piece of paper, left by the social worker from my brother's village. I was afraid of being manipulated, deceived, of someone taking my child. I didn't know who I could trust, or if I could trust anyone anymore. But I also desperately needed help. I needed someone who would understand what I was going through, not to tell me that I was exaggerating or that I was too sensitive. I needed confirmation that I'm not a good-for-nothing who harms the child by taking him and running away from his father, who was torturing us. And I found it. Thank God I found it. I found support for my soul, and legal support, and even a bed to sleep in was for us. For the first time, I saw light on my way, and for the first time, I felt that I was not alone on the front. I calibrated myself mentally. I recharged myself with hopes and many dreams for me and my baby. Meanwhile, on my own, I finished my house as much as I could. He no longer participated, of course. And in the spring, on Women's Day, I returned home. I allowed the idiot visits to my home to see his child, not for other reasons. There followed again beatings, abuses, screams, police, fines, spitting, insults, harassment, car chases, control, spying, curses, broken doors, death threats, manipulations, blackmail, child with a broken leg at 11 months due to his carelessness. A major abuse. I no longer saw a way out. I simply could no longer get rid of the parasite because he used the child to have access to me. Entire CDs of recordings can confirm what I say. I got another medical legal certificate, he got more fines for disturbing the public peace. Until December 1st, I survived the emotional abuse in all its forms. And on December 1st, 2023, the last attack took place, which resulted in his arrest and the criminal investigations, hearings, and everything that involved 4 trials. 2 criminal, 1 for custody, and another one for protection order. Both I and the child received a 1-year protection order with a surveillance device. But the fear I felt during that time, I will never forget it. I heard even in my dream his voice saying to me, "I will stick this knife into you." I hate him. I detest him. I wish he would never come near us again. From prison, he harassed my family members. Both he and his parents tried all sorts of methods to manipulate me to withdraw my complaint.